I don't know if I could have a higher privilege, a more distinct honor on my part from introducing our next guest speaker. I have known of Jack McLam for years. We talked for the first time a couple of years ago, perhaps, and I tell you, I was delighted when I knew that he was going to be here. This is a man that I was mentioning earlier has been put to the test. Physically, he was assaulted, sustained traumatic injuries, and ultimately, he had to leave the Phoenix Police Department. But in those years, Jack has built a tremendous outreach to both law enforcement officers and the military. And I will let him tell you more about that. I'm sure he will. But I will tell you, it is with a great deal of pride and pleasure that I introduce to you America's greatest law enforcement officer that ever put on a uniform. Welcome, Jack McLam. Thank you, dear friend.
Wow. How do you follow that? You know, what a message he had. Fantastic.
Jack, is that button down? It's on the mic there. I may have turned it off. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's got to go up.
Let me look at it here. I can't do anything without my glasses on.
Push it up towards you.
Yeah, it's up.
Is it up all the way?
It's up all the way. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
A little closer.
All right.
Maybe you pull it out of there.
Okay.
That'll work.
I can make this thing work here. There you go. How's that? Okay, good. I tell you, I'm just so proud to be here and to see the speakers we have. Fantastic Americans, and Greg Evanston's one of the greatest. And I was so happy to hear his speech tonight because he's right on target, you know. The reason this country is going down is because Christians have withdrawn into their churches to sing music and play rock music, and they're not doing what God told them to do. You know, Psalms 94:16 said, God said, who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? But Christians have been taught the doctrine that was created in 1835 of the pre-trib rapture of the saints by two Jesuit priests to cause Christians to withdraw. And they worship their pastors or government ministers today more than they worship Jesus Christ. And they've withdrawn into the churches because the pastor says, we're leaving next week in the pre-trib rapture. Keep your head down. Don't fight Satan, because Jesus Christ will bump off Satan when he comes. And so Christians have withdrawn into their churches. And in the last 30 years, I've watched and fought it myself, them throwing God and Jesus Christ out of this nation. But the other Christians are in the churches just having a good time every summer. It's every Sunday, and it's a social event on Sundays. The preacher knows better than to say anything that'll upset anybody, because he wants that donation plate to be filled every week, so he won't say anything that'll upset anybody. And so the ministers are preaching the social gospel instead of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so Greg is right. If we're going to get this country back, we got to look at 2 Chronicles 7:14, where Jesus said, you know, those called by my name will humble themselves and come back to me, and I will hear from heaven and will heal their land if they will. I'll forgive their sins. But if we don't turn back to Christ, I'll tell you, this nation's lost, because I was just reading Joshua this last week. I'm reading through the Bible another time. I've read through the Bible so many times, and every time Israel turned against God, he brought his own enemies upon the people to crush them and enslave them. And he did it repeatedly over and over again, and Israel would cry out to God, and then he'd bring a Redeemer in to throw off his enemies, and then they'd turn against him again, and he'd bring his enemies onto Israel again. And so that's exactly what's happening in this country. We've turned against God, and the Christians will say, oh, no, not in our church. We pray to Jesus every day. But you're not doing what Jesus told you to do. And the watchman on the wall is for all of us. We have to educate and sound the alarm when the enemy's approaching, and we're not doing that. And so, but Jesus says that if you're a watchman on the wall and you sound the alarm, and if people don't pay any attention to you, then their blood is not going to be on your hands. But if you don't sound the alarm and the enemy comes and kills these people, their blood will be on your hands. And yet we're told that out of the Scofield Reference Bible, a very evil book, that the seminaries, when that Bible came out, it was written by Oxford University. It wasn't written by Scofield, but he signed his name to it. And it had all the lies in it about Romans 13, you have to obey even evil government because all government's of God. And if you ever read Romans 13, you know that's not what it says. It says righteous leaders are going to do righteous things, and we're to follow righteous leaders. We're not supposed to follow evil leaders, because what the preachers are doing is setting us up to follow the Antichrist one day by telling us to follow evil leaders because all government's of God. That's not what Romans 13 says. But so our biggest problem in America is how to reach the Christians when they got that security blanket of we're leaving here next week in the pre-trib rapture of the saints, so I don't care if Satan is ruling this nation. Let him rule it because Jesus will clean it up when he gets here. Well, we're not following the Word of God. God told us to stand up against evil, to rise up against the evil ones, and to stand up against the workers of iniquity, and we're not doing it. So God is bringing what's called the sword of the Lord upon us today to crush us and enslave us because we're not doing what he told us to do in his holy word. And so the biggest problem we have, I've got three sons. And one son I'm really proud of. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he's been to Baghdad twice, and he understands about rising up against the evil ones. But my other two sons are going to a church which is a prosperity gospel church where the minister says, give me all your money and God will bless you 10 times with more money. And so the preacher's getting wealthy, and my sons just worship him, and he's telling them, we're leaving next week in the pre-trib rapture, so don't do anything. Don't make the government mad at you because we're leaving. Well, I have a great preacher friend of mine. Butch Paul is one, but I also have another one called Pastor John Weaver. I don't know, some of you probably heard from him from Georgia. And he produced a sermon that said, rapture of the evil ones. Rapture of the evil ones. And he proves in this sermon that you can, that the Bible teaches you in 20 different places in the scriptures that who's leaving here in the pre-trib rapture is the evil ones, not God's saints. And he also goes over Proverbs 10:30 that says God's people will always be on the earth and the evil ones are going to be taken out in the near future. That's Proverbs 10:30. And so in this sermon, he proves to us that that who's leaving here going to be taken away by force, be snatched out, is going to be the evil ones in the world, and not the pre-trib rapture of the saint. That was created in 1835 by 2 Jesuit priests to cause Christians to totally withdraw. And so I'd like to just leave you with this thought, that in Luke 17, in your scriptures, the King James Bible, it talks about Jesus talking and giving a sermon saying, 2 men would be together in the field, one would be taken, one would not. 2 women would be grinding together, one would be taken, one not. And 2 men would be in bed together, one taken and one not. And right after that, the preacher stops there. All your preachers stop right there and say, oh, that's the rapture of the saints. You see, that's the rapture of the saints. But if they would read the next 3 verses, and they won't do it, it proves that that's the rapture of the evil ones. Because the disciples said, right after that sermon, Lord, where are these people taken? And Jesus Christ said to them, wherever the bodies are, that's where the eagles will be gathered together. And now if you read the scriptures like I do, and some of you do, you know that the eagles represent flesh eaters. They eat dead bodies. They eat carcasses. So Jesus was telling the disciples, but the preachers won't read that next 3 verses in there, because then you'll know he's lying to you, that it's not the rapture of the saints. It's the snatching away of the evil ones, when Jesus Christ said, wherever the bodies are, the eagles will be gathered together. And in the scriptures, the eagles are always like buzzards. They're eating dead carcasses. They're eating dead flesh. Their babies, even, it says, are sucking up the blood. And so the ministers have an agenda, the government ministers, and it's to keep you quiet and to keep you in the church and not to offend you at all. And so you'll bring your money back every month, or every week. And so it's sad, but we have been taken over psychologically, not just by the politicians, but by our own clergy in America. So we got to get past that. But let me tell you about law enforcement. Greg did a fantastic job. Thank you, Greg. God bless you, brother. But I want to tell you that I was in the military during the Vietnam War and had a top secret clearance and was back in the jungles with intel and communication bases, secret intel bases. And it wasn't what I wanted. I was tricked and lied to by my recruiter, because I was 17 years old when I went in the military, and I was the first youngest scuba diver in the nation. And I'd been trained by Navy divers in Washington, D.C. to use scuba gear right after it was created. And I wanted to go into the UDT, the underwater demolition teams. So I went to I went to the recruiter and said, I want to go into the UDT. And he says, no problem, just sign here. Well, they put me in the Navy, and I signed at 17 years of age, and then they shipped me off to a jungle someplace, not in Vietnam, and gave me a top secret clearance and put me with these intel guys and communications guys. And I never, except for my own personal diving on the weekends, I was in Puerto Rico and different places where there's a lot of wonderful oceans. So I got to do a lot of diving, but not for the Navy, and never got over to Vietnam. But I had buddies of mine that died over there, and so I took the oath once there, and then I took the oath again as a law enforcement officer. But it wasn't until I was 32 years of age that I entered into law enforcement. And that was a wonderful time to go in, because what I didn't know is they were brainwashing the 20 and 21-year-olds that were in the academy class with me. When I went into the academy class, I was with 20 and 21-year-olds, and I was 32. So I was the old man. They called me the old man. You see, at 32. I didn't feel old, but next to them I was. But every day, the commanders would come in and brainwash these young 20 and 21-year-olds by saying things that I knew was a lie. They would say, they'd come in and say, you can't trust the citizens out there to ever come to your help if you ever need help. You can only trust fellow officers. And so what I saw in my 16 weeks in the academy was that they're brainwashing these young officers, female and male, to be against the citizens. They were separating them from the citizens. And I couldn't understand why. I was not knowledgeable at that time. And I had been in, after the Vietnam War, I'd gone into business in Washington, D.C. and succeeded, moved out to L.A. and went into business at L.A. and succeeded in business. And I wouldn't have left L.A. because every weekend I was able to go out and dive in the wonderful Pacific Ocean out there and shoot fish, and I loved it. So I had a good life, but the big earthquake hit and tore down the VA hospital and tore down the freeways, and we had these aftershocks. Every few days, these aftershocks would come and would scare the tar out of us. I mean, and so I took my family, picked them up, took them to Arizona, because I heard that L.A. was going to fall into the ocean. You see, and we believed it then, because of all the earthquake activity. And so I moved my 2 boys and my wife to Phoenix, and we went out there to buy a business. But when we got out in Phoenix, we found out the business was a sham, and they had a doctored set of books. And so I didn't buy the business, so I'm without a job, and so I'm downtown in Phoenix one day, and I saw this big sign saying police exam being given. Now, the only thing I knew about law enforcement was Adam 12. I used to watch Adam 12 on the television, and I liked it. It was a good show. And I thought, I'm going to be Adam 12. I'm going to go, I'm going to be a cop. So I went in and took 7 tests. They gave us 7 tests, physical agility, psychological tests and everything, and written tests and all, and I passed them all, and they put me in the academy in June in Phoenix when I was 32. And so I'd had a lot of knowledge. I mean, I knew a lot. I was in business for several years, and when the commanders came in each day and lied to the 20 and 21-year-olds, I could see the brainwashing going on, but I didn't understand why. I said to myself, Jack, the best thing to do would be creating police officers that would have empathy and sympathy for the people so that the police could work with the people. But I saw them dividing the police from the people in the police academy. And so it didn't hit me, it didn't affect me, but it affected all the 21 and 20-year-olds there. And so when they came out of the police academy, it was them or us. It was the police and it was the citizens, instead of us being together, united. And then I began to learn about why they were doing it, because they were going to be asked to do things one day that they didn't want to do and didn't like to do, but they had to do against the citizens. And back there, that was 1976 when I went through the police academy. And they were already brainwashing the young cops to be adversaries of the citizens. And so when I got out of the police academy, I wanted to be put in the nice, safe area of Phoenix, where I could learn to be a cop slowly, But no, they threw me right in the hell zone. It was called the war zone of South Phoenix. And I was thrust right into the war zone, and within 2 years, I had seen every crime committed man or woman could commit against man or woman in 2 years. And so I was a hardened cop after 2 years. Usually it takes 5 to 6 years before you experience all the things that I experienced in the war zone of South Phoenix. And so I was successful on my beat. And by the way, guess what my beat number was when I would get on the phone? It was Adam 12. Of the whole city of Phoenix, I had Adam 12. I'd get on the radio, Adam 12. They say, yes. So my wishes to become Adam 12 happened, okay? But I was in the war zone, and it was dangerous, very, very dangerous there. And we fought every day. I mean, we wrestled and fought with people every day, you know. And so up north, in North Phoenix, you didn't fight anybody. Maybe once every 3 weeks, you know, you'd have a wrestling match with somebody. So I learned very quickly, and we had a situation where the young kids in the South Phoenix area were Latino and black people. And they saw us go into their houses all the time and arrest their moms and dads and brothers and sisters, wrestle with them and take them out and put them in cuffs and carry them off. So they thought we were the devil. They thought the cops were the devil. So I developed a school program for the elementary schools called the Officer Friendly Program. And some of you probably heard about it because the Sears Roebuck Foundation came in and made it a national program called the Officer Friendly Program. And I didn't know they were going to do that. It's just that I did it, and I went into the schools to talk to the little Latino and little black children that we were their friends, you know, and try to get over this thing where we would come into their house and arrest their moms and dads and brothers and sisters and haul them off. And so it was hard, but what I did was I took a briefcase, like the one I have on my table over there, and I divided the briefcase in half inside. And I put a little live alligator in one half of the briefcase and a little live snake in the other half of the briefcase. One was called Sneaky Snake, and the other was called Alley-Oop. And I would take that into the schools, and when I would talk about safety for the children, they would talk about the canals in Phoenix, and they loved to go swimming in the canals. And I said, but in the canals, you may have snakes in the canals, you may have alligators in the canals. Of course, we didn't have alligators in Phoenix, but I would pull out the little alligator, live alligator, and a little live snake, and the kids loved the little snake and the alligator, so they loved me. You know, it was kind of, that's the way it was. When I would pull out the little alligator, a lot of times he would grab me by the thumb and hang on and bite me on the thumb, you know, and I'd go, ouch, 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 and the kids would just roar laughing, you know, just laughing, and the teacher would run out the back of the door. And when I'd pull the snake out, she'd run out the back and look in the window. She thought maybe it really was the devil in her classroom, you know, in uniform. And so, but the kids and I had a great time. And so by the time the Officer Friendly Program really got rolling in Phoenix, in South Phoenix, we had a lot of criminal damage that the kids would throw Coke bottles at the police cars. They would throw rocks at the police cars and at the officers. And that began to fall off. You know, when the Officer Friendly Program really got going, we didn't get as much criminal damage to the police cars and the officers. And the children began to really love Officer Friendly and Alley-Oop and the little Sneaky Snake. And so the Sears Roebuck found out about it, and they came in and made it a national program, the Officer Friendly Program. And so that year I won Officer of the Year. You know, out of 2,500 officers, that was really something to win Officer of the Year. Out of 2,500 officers, male and female, under arms in the Phoenix Police Department, I won Officer of the Year. And then I went on the next year to win Officer of the Year. And then the third year, I came in second place. And so I became the most highly decorated officer in the history of Phoenix, Arizona. But I'm also now still the most highly decorated officer, but I'm also the most fired officer in the history of Phoenix, Arizona, because I became a constitutionalist. And I began to stand up and say no to doing things criminal that we were told to do as police officers against the citizens. And I wouldn't lie on the witness stand. I wouldn't change my police report to go along with the other officers' police reports. When we have somebody assaulted by a police officer, they call us into a big room, and we'd all write our police reports together and lie in our police report so that that person couldn't sue the city of Phoenix. You see, and we were told to do this, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So I was kind of Peck's bad boy, but I was already the most highly decorated officer, and so I was beginning to be very persecuted. To be the most highly decorated officer, I was also very persecuted because I wouldn't do anything criminal, and I wouldn't lie on my police reports, and I wouldn't do these things. And a good example is when we'd stop somebody called a patriot in a traffic stop or something like that, and the person would get out of the car and start preaching the Constitution to the officers. They immediately called backup, and they would come here. And one case was a man had a gun on his front seat, which is perfectly legal in Phoenix to have the gun on the front seat. But if you covered it with your coat or it was concealed, then it was a concealed weapon. So one time I was there, and they really got mad at this kid for quoting the Constitution to him. And they said, okay, we're going to agree that we're going to say that his gun was under his coat, and we're going to charge him with a felony for having a concealed weapon with his coat over his gun. I said his coat wasn't over his gun. It's laying right in the front seat, which is perfectly legal. And so they said, no, we're going to say his coat was over. I said, no, we're not. I said, I'm going to tell the truth, and so you guys better not lie, or I'm going to expose you for lying against this guy. Because he was a constitutionalist, they wanted to do something to him. You know, they wanted to hit him with a crime. And so I got in a lot of trouble because I wouldn't go along with everything in the 6th largest city in the United States. And so then I started my Aid and Abet Police Military newsletter on constitutional issues. And boy, that upset my police chief. My police chief was Ruben Ortega, and he was a murderer. We knew that. He killed a friend of his wife's, a friend of his wife's. He murdered him and got away with it because he was police chief. And so Ruben Ortega didn't like me preaching the Constitution to my fellow police officers and soldiers. And so he hated my publication, and the federal government wanted to get my publication's mailing list of police officers and soldiers that loved the Constitution and wanted to support the Constitution and didn't want to lie, didn't want to do things like we were told to do in our daily activities there on the Phoenix Police Department. And so the feds wanted my mailing list, and I refused to give it to them. And so my police chief called me in one day and said, I want you to go home and get your mailing list for Aid and Abet Police Military Newsletter, and give it to me because there's a sheriff in Wyoming that wants a copy of it. And I said, Chief, I can't do it. And, of course, he fired me that day. I said, I'm not doing it because I told these police officers and soldiers that I would never give up their names, to the feds. And I said, I suspect you're trying to get this for the feds because they've been after this mailing list. And he didn't say anything to me, but he fired me that day for disobeying a direct order. He told me to get the list and give it to him, and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So he fired me that day. Well, the very liberal Civil Service Board in the city of Phoenix, very liberal, they didn't like what I wrote about the Constitution and about being honest and above board and so forth, but they said you have a right to write that to your fellow police officers and soldiers. So they restored my job. They put me back on the force with full back pay, and Chief Ruben Ortega was really mad. So I was injured in the line of duty shortly after that and was off duty mending from my injuries, and he fired me for a poor work record, And so he fired me, and the Civil Service Board had me back in to talk to him about what happened, and they told Chief Ruben Ortega this is a vendetta against Officer McLam for writing his Aid and Abet Police Military newsletter on constitutional issues. So they put me back to work with full back pay again. And Chief Ruben Ortega was just madder than a wet hen. And so he then decided to try to get me killed because he couldn't fire me and get rid of me. So he told all the police officers, 2,500 police officers. I was working the war zone of South Phoenix my whole career. And he said, if McLam calls for a backup, don't go. You don't go to help McLam. If he needs a backup, you leave him alone. You don't go for a backup. If you go, I'm going to fire you. So I worked 5 years without a backup, and I was injured numerous times because I couldn't get any help. And so I wasn't killed, praise the Lord, and it was the Lord that kept me alive during that time because I had some terrible times. Yeah. But I kept publishing my publication, and my chief was just beside himself. He couldn't get me killed, you know, and he was trying very hard. But then 5 years later, I was working, he had me even working Sundays, and I had seniority. I should have been off Saturday and Sunday, but he put me on Saturdays and Sundays because he knew I had children and a family and wanted to upset my home life. And so one Sunday morning, I arrested a drug smuggler out of Mexico, an illegal alien running drugs into the city of Phoenix. And he and I got in a big battle, a physical battle of wrestling. And I was trying to get him under control, and I kept calling for a backup. And, of course, nobody'd come, you know. And so we fought for over an hour. And I already had serious neck problems and a right arm problem and my back problem. And so in this big battle for over an hour, wrestling match, I finally could do nothing more because of my injuries than to hold on to his foot. And I wouldn't let go of his foot, and he kept punching me in the head and punching me in the head. And I held on to his foot, and he was dragging me down the sidewalk trying to get away from me, and a cop came by and saw me and stopped to help me, finally. And so we got him under arrest, and he went to jail, and we found the drugs and everything, and I went to retirement because the city doctors knew that Chief Ruben Ortega was trying to get me killed. And so this time I was so seriously injured, they said, we're not putting you back to work. You're going to retire out. We're going to retire you out. And so that's how I went into medical retirement. And so God was with me, praise the Lord, that whole time and kept me alive working in the war zone of South Phoenix where the gangs were there. And I'll tell you, it was a horrible place to work. But if you like activity, as a policeman, it was a great place to work. I mean, if you liked a lot of violent activity and everything, it was what you wanted, you know. And so that's my police career. I kept loving the Lord and kept publishing my constitutional publication, and God kept me alive for 5 years after the chief put out that memo that nobody would come to my rescue if I ever needed help. And only God kept me alive, and I'm proud, pleased with that. And so just to give you a few things of what's going on in law enforcement, while I was there, we noticed that the judges who were prosecutors, the prosecutors that were actual criminals and destroyed evidence, manufactured witnesses. They'd pay witnesses to come in and lie and testify against patriots mostly. And they were promoted up to judgeships, you know, and none of the other judges that were good, moral people were promoted up to judgeships, you know, or promoted up from judge, low-level judge on up through the system. But only the criminal prosecutors were promoted as judges. And so we watched that happen. You know, some of the prosecutors we knew were absolute criminals, and they always got the judgeships. And so the criminals in Washington District of Criminals don't want any judges that are moral, because they would be arrested. You know, the criminals in Washington District of Criminals would be arrested and prosecuted and put in prison. So they set up a system where judges come from prosecutors that are criminals themselves and totally immoral. And so that's what we have with this Sonia character now. A guy called me on the phone and said, it's Sonia Sodomizer, you know, is her name. So I've been using that name because she's so evil. I mean, she's totally evil. She's an activist judge, and she's actually said that judges should make law from the bench. And she's actually said that, and this didn't come out in the hearings, but she says all white males should be castrated. You know, she said that some years back, and that didn't come out in the hearings, you know. So she's a total racist. She belongs to La Raza, which is the race, and it's the most racist organization in America except for the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, that hates America, hates Christians, and just passed the Pedophile Protection Act, you know, and the hate crimes legislation. They've been working at it for 10 years to try to pass it, and they finally got it passed. But old Sonia is going to be on the Supreme Court now, and she's an abortionist. She loves killing babies. She loves making law from the bench. She's a racist, and she's everything Abomination is. You know, phony President Abomination she's just a duplicate of him, because he loves abortions. When he first got in the office, the first 2 weeks, he signed a bill that used yours and my tax dollars to fund abortions all over the world. And now he's doing the same thing, trying to put in the health care bill that our tax dollars will fund abortions here in America. And so he's a baby killer, you know. And so's Sonia Sodomizer, you know. So we have a total criminal system, just like Greg said. And the criminals control the nation today because Christians have withdrawn into their churches to sing Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya. We're leaving next week, so we don't have to do anything. But they forget to read the Bible themselves, where God told you, yes, you do. You're supposed to stand up against unrighteousness. You're supposed to stand up against evil. But we're not doing that. So our nation's going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, really quick here. And now that we've got phony President Abomination up there, and his orders from the Council on Foreign Relations is to make America a third world nation as fast as he can, and he's doing that. We were $1 trillion in debt before he came in as president, and now we're $4.5 trillion in debt in this nation. And if you know what $1 trillion is, it's beyond our minds to even calculate what $1 trillion is. Billion is bad enough, but $1 trillion is a billion, you know, is what $1 trillion is. So we can't even compromise it or think of what it is if you say $1 trillion. But now we're $4.5 trillion in debt. And he works for the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a totally globalist group, communist globalist group, actually. And he's a communist himself, and he's following orders. Every day he gets on television, he reads what he's been told to tell you, because he doesn't make any of this thing up himself, because he's totally a puppet of the Communist Council on Foreign Relations. Now, interesting enough, Bush and Cheney were puppets of theirs too. And so nothing's really changed, but Abomination has the ability now and is being told to run us into third world nation status as quick as he can and put it under the communist Soviet totalitarian military military system here in America as fast as he can. And that's going to come, folks, as we heard that from our military intel people, we have good contacts in the military. And military intel, who are constitutionalists, have been contacting us and telling us that what they have already set up is an attack on America in 5 different cities. And it's another false flag attack. And our military intel told us that the CIA and the Mossad blew us up on 9/11. They now know this, and all the military intel around the world know this, and all the nations, that it was the Mossad and the CIA that blew us up on 9/11, not 19 guys with box cutters, Muslims with box cutters. And so they're doing the same thing. They've taken this swine flu that they created at Fort Detrick, Maryland, in the military biolab there. They created the swine flu out of combining it with the bird flu, the human flu, and they dug up bodies from 1918 of people in America that died of the swine flu and took parts of their bodies and created the swine flu. And they mixed the swine flu with the avian flu and the human flu and created the swine flu, and then they dropped it in 5 different cities in the United States to start this panic. Now, I'm sure that you already know that the globalists have written and stated many times that they only want 500 million people on earth to serve them as slaves, and they want to eliminate the other 6.5 billion people on earth. So they're hoping to use this swine flu vaccine, which is going to be poisonous, to scare the people around the world into taking this swine flu vaccine that is poisonous and killing 6.5 billion people. That's what they're up to right now. And I've heard this from military intel. They've been giving me this information, that this is what they're up to. And when the panic starts in September, they want to put us under Soviet-style totalitarian military rule here in America. And then they're going to go house to house with their 500,000 foreign troops on our military bases in America and take your guns away and take your life if you don't give up your guns. And the same people are doing this, folks, that started the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 and went over and Russia was a Christian nation at that time and was prospering and was doing just like America did when we were a Christian nation. And so they killed the Christian Tsar and his family. The Bolsheviks did. The communist Zionists did. And then they, in the next 15 years, killed 66 million Christians over there to set up the communist system. They had to get rid of the Christians, so they killed 66 million in the next 15 years. And they are talking about doing that here now, that if the foreign troops come to your home and you're a Christian, they give you one chance to turn against Jesus Christ, and if you don't, they shoot you in the head, okay? So Abomination has been given the chore of setting up a third world nation for America, bring us down to third world nation status, but also bringing in the swine flu pandemic and scaring us so that we'll line up and take all these shots, put us under martial law, and the military will actually come to your house and make you take these shots if you don't take them voluntarily. And the foreign troops will come to your house and make you take it voluntarily. Or not voluntarily. If you say no, then they charge you with a crime and haul you off. But if you're a Christian, they shoot you in the head if you don't turn against Jesus Christ, okay? And that's all planned. Our military intel people tell us that. And so there's some horrible things coming. So the most important thing we can do, folks, is to get back under 2 Chronicles 7:14 in the Scriptures. 2 Chronicles 7:14. Because if we do that, if we turn back to Christ, then he'll petition heaven and God will take the sword of Damocles off of us, the sword of the Lord, and heal our land. But if we don't do that, if we don't come back under 2 Chronicles 7:14, then we're in for horrible, horrible times, like we've never seen before. Now, talk about the tribulation, and the rest of the world laughs at us because they've had the tribulation. 66 million Christians were killed in Russia. Now, wasn't that a tribulation for them? And in Red China, Christians are slaughtered all the time and have been over the years. And Slobodan Milosevic had a Christian nation in Serbia, and he said no to the New World Order. So the communist Zionists that control our nation and control our military had us go over and bomb Serbia and attack Serbia and kill millions of Christians over there. And then we captured Slobodan Milosevic and took him to the world court. And we didn't have evidence against him to prosecute him, so after a few years we went in and killed him and said he died in prison. Well, he did die in prison, but we killed him. And then Saddam Hussein said no to the New World Order, and we had to go in and take over Iraq and kill Saddam Hussein and bring in the communist Zionists to control that area, which they're now in control. They put a puppet president in, and so they have control of that nation that said no to the New World Order. And now Iran has said no to the New World Order, and guess what? They're building nuclear weapons. Well, my military intel people have been telling me for 3 years that that's false. They've found no evidence that Iran is building nuclear weapons at all. We had 17 surprise inspections last year, 2008, in Iran, and just walked into their labs where they're building nuclear energy, refining uranium to 3.5%. Listen to me now. 3.5% is for building nuclear energy. And you have to refine it to 90% to build a nuclear bomb. And so we found that nowhere. And our military intel know that our government's lying to us, and the communist Zionists that control Israel are lying when they say they're building nuclear bombs there to bomb Israel. So everybody's all upset. And now they want us to go in and kill 50 million Iranians out of the 72 million Iranians there by bombing their cities and their towns, not their nuclear plants, because they know they're not building nuclear bombs. They already know that. That's a lie. But they want to have us bomb the cities and kill 50 million Iranians in this attack on Iran because they don't want the same thing to happen that's happening in Iraq right now. We've killed 1,300,000 Iraqi men, women, and children, non-combatants. And the people of Iraq are rising up against our soldiers. And that's who we've been fighting for the last 3 years, is the Iraqi people rising up because we've killed 1,300,000 of their children and moms and dads over there. And they don't want that to happen in Iran. So our military intel tell us that they want us to kill 50 million out of the 72 million Iranians with our bombings on the cities so that they can't organize and rise up against us like they're doing in Iraq right now. And we're being told that, it's the insurgency, it's Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It's not true. These are lies. Al-Qaeda was actually created by the CIA. It's a group created by the CIA, Al-Qaeda. And so when you hear that name, think CIA, because Al-Qaeda's the boogeyman. Al-Qaeda's everywhere. Al-Qaeda's going to get you, going to come get you, But that's the CIA organization that they created. And so our military intel is a big help to us. We have 2 police and military associations up there in the Rocky Mountains of Idaho, and we hear from them all the time as they keep us updated on what's really happening behind the scenes. And it's marvelous to have this intel coming in all the time. I worked with them when I was in during the Vietnam War, the intel branch, It had a top secret clearance. And so I didn't lose all my contacts, and I've even made more contacts as we started our Police Against the New World Order. Police and Military Against the New World Order, it's called now. That organization we started now has soldiers and police officers from 17 different countries in our Police and Military Against the New World Order. And they're fighting it too in their nation. And so they really like us having such a group, Police and Military Against the New World Order. Now, this leads me to a very important point I want to leave with you. Because we got a good crowd here today, I want to tell you something. When I read about Oath Keepers, I was really thrilled to my heart. Because I read what Oath Keepers were asking the soldiers and police to do. Say no to gathering the guns. Say no to taking you to the concentration camps. And all these different things in Oath Keepers. If you've read it, you know what I mean. But it scares me, folks, because they're creating a list of police and military that are going to join the Patriots. And the FBI and the CIA wants that list very badly so they can assassinate all those police officers and soldiers. So Stewart Rhodes is building this list of police and soldiers that have said no to the New World Order, basically, and they want to eliminate those soldiers and police. So what I'm telling police and soldiers to do is to read the oath and take the oath in your heart and swear to not collect the guns when you're ordered to do so, not to fill the internment camps, concentration camps, and not do all these evil things that are unconstitutional. But do not sign in. Do not sign up. Now, our Police and Military Against the New World Order, we don't sign anybody up. We have members in other nations, but we don't sign anybody up because they could kick our door in any minute and get this list of soldiers and police that are against the New World Order. And so Stewart Rhodes is in the same position. I was a police officer in Phoenix and made a list of soldiers and police through my Aid and Abet Police Military newsletter on constitutional issues, and they wanted my list. And I can only imagine they wanted it so they could eliminate those soldiers and police. But this is why lesbian Janet Napolitano, who's head of Homeland Insecurity now, put out that report recently that the soldiers coming back from Iraq can't be trusted, that they may be terrorists. They may be lone wolf terrorists because they're patriots. And they may want to join the patriotic Americans against the communist Zionist system that we have today that is taking our freedoms away from us. And so she put out that report, and then she caught so much flack from military and police that she had to lie and rescind it a little bit and say, oh, that's not what I meant. Well, that's exactly what she meant, that they're not trusted. So I tell Oath Keepers, and I've talked to one of the leaders of Oath Keepers and say, do not have these soldiers and police sign in. Don't make that list because your door can be kicked in one day and they're going to get that list. And they have 40,000 mercenaries, killer mercenaries there in Iraq right now, dressing up as Sunnis and blowing up the Shiites, and then they come back and dress up as Shiites and they blow up the Sunnis to cause the civil war there in Iraq. They want a civil war. They don't want those people to ever be able to get back together again. So they've started a civil war over there. And what I've heard from our military intel is they want to bring back those 40,000 mercenary killers and have them take over each county in America, even over the sheriff, and now we'll have a killer at the head of each of our county governments to take care of all of us patriots, you see, that they don't like at all. But this is what military intel tells me that those 40,000 mercenaries could get this list from Stuart Rhodes at Oath Keepers of the soldiers and police officers that have signed in and say, we're going to stand for America, we're going to stand for the Constitution, and we're not going to do anything unconstitutional, we're told. And so we have Blackwater and we have others out there that would gladly go and kill each of these soldiers and police officers, murder them for standing with the people, because they don't want them to come back. Janet Napolitano already said that she's scared to death of these soldiers coming back and joining the people against the Soviet totalitarian system they're going to bring upon us here. So keep that in mind, folks. I warned, we just had a big conference for Oath Keepers in Los Angeles at Granada Forum down there, and I contacted them and told them, tell your soldiers and police officers don't sign in, because the feds will kick in the door of Stuart Rhodes there at the Oath Keepers and take that list and go annihilate them. And so it has me deeply concerned. Stuart Rhodes said something that concerned me when he said that he was trying to please the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and he doesn't want to upset the Anti-Defamation League. And that really shook me up. And I started thinking, is Stuart Rhodes really on our side? Or is he a government agent collecting the names of police and military through Oath Keepers to turn them in and get them all killed? Well, I don't think so. I think Stuart Rhodes is on our side. But I don't know for sure. If he wants to please the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, there's something wrong, because I got a hold of him and I said, they're the most hateful anti-American group, racist group, anti-Christian group in America. And why do you want to please them? Why do you not want to upset them? And he wouldn't answer me. He didn't answer me, So I don't know what to say, folks, but just to remind you, anybody you know as a soldier or police officer that wants to sign in with Oath Keepers, tell them not to. They can be warriors for Christ and country without signing the list, okay? I read it and I took the oath. I've taken it twice in my life, and I took it again with Oath Keepers, but I'm not signing in. Of course, I'm already on the list anyway, to be executed. But I'm just worried about our brothers and sisters, and our sons and daughters that are soldiers and like what they read at Oath Keepers, and we don't want them to sign in and then get a bullet in the head, because that's exactly what they're going to try to do. Well, folks, I think I'm just about out of time. And I can tell you that I am just so pleased to be here among you great patriots. I am just so pleased and honored to be here with you. And I just love you dearly and want to keep doing whatever I can do to bring our country back to God and our republic, constitutional republic, and I'm going to keep doing that as long as I'm breathing. And I just want to tell you how proud I am to be here, to be with you folks, and to be with Pastor Butch Paul, who is a great, great American and a great Christian man. And so I just want to say, God bless all of you, and I pray that God will once again bless America if we come back to 2 Chronicles 7:14. God bless all of you, okay?